I'm Colleen Walsh, 32 years old. It was a warm July evening at a classy restaurant in Fargo, North Dakota. My family was hosting our annual gathering, and this year they even invited my brother's colleagues and his boss, a perfect stage for him to show off. I walked in hoping for a chance to reconnect, but my mother cut me down cold. "We didn't invite you for a reason." My brother's voice followed sharp as a knife. "What are you even doing here? Don't let anyone know you're related to me." My chest tightened, but I stayed silent. He paraded around the tables bragging as if the recent fintech project was all his doing. I knew the truth: he had contributed almost nothing. Then the moment came. His boss stepped up to the podium, voice booming. "Let's give our thanks to Colleen Walsh, founder of Walsh Analytics, the one who saved this entire project." The room erupted in applause. My family froze. My brother's jaw dropped. My parents' eyes darted away. I stood, smiled, and said nothing about them. That night, I left the restaurant in silence, yet a strange calm washed over me. The truth had been laid bare before my brother's boss and colleagues. Deep down, I knew if I spoke even one more word, the image my brother clung to could crumble instantly. And in that moment, the balance of power within my family shifted forever. A week later, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. A text popped up from my brother. "Don't do this. Please." Suddenly they needed me, but I was no longer the Colleen they used to dismiss. I had changed. Before diving into my story, tell me, what time is it, where you're watching, and which city are you in? I want to see just how far this story has traveled. And if you've ever lived through family drama of your own, share it in the comments. Growing up in our Fargo home, I was always the quiet one in Brendan's shadow. My brother had a knack for stealing the spotlight. His easy smile, his confident stride, the way he could charm anyone with a quick story. My mom and dad never missed a chance to praise him. "He's going places." My mom would say, her eyes bright with pride, while I sat at the dinner table picking at my food invisible. My dad would nod, adding how Brendan's charisma would open doors. Meanwhile, I was the one who fixed their computer when it crashed, or explained how to set up their email, but they never noticed. To them, I was just good with tech, like I spent my days untangling cords. When I was younger, I tried to share my dreams. I'd talk about coding, about building something big, but my mom would cut me off. "That's nice, Colleen, but let's hear about Brendan's new job." Brendan, a few years older, always had a new story. Some big meeting, some fancy client dinner. They ate it up, never asking what I was working on. I stopped trying to tell them. Instead, I poured everything into Walsh Analytics, my fintech startup. Nights at my laptop coding algorithms to streamline payment systems turned into a company that banks relied on. I was proud, but I never told my family. They wouldn't care. What hurt more was the money. For years, I'd been helping them out, paying their utility bills when they came up short, covering Brendan's rent when he forgot to budget. Thousands of dollars wired quietly from my account with no thank you. Once I sent $500 for their electric bill, and my mom texted back, "Brendan's working so hard, you know." I stared at my phone, my throat tight. I wasn't even an afterthought. Another time, Brendan called asking for $1,000 to cover his lease. I sent it, hoping he'd ask about my life. He didn't. He just said, "You're the best, sis," and hung up. I kept my work a secret, not out of shame, but because I knew they'd dismiss it. Walsh Analytics grew partnerships with major banks, a team of engineers reporting to me, a corner office in Minneapolis. I was the CEO, but to my family, I was still the girl who fixed computers. They never asked about my job, never visited my office, never wondered how I paid for their bills. My mom once said, "Brendan's in fintech, such a big deal," while I sat there running a company that powered half the transactions in the Midwest. I'd smile, nod, and change the subject. Brendan's career was all they saw. He'd landed a sales role at a fintech firm, the kind that leaned on his charm more than his skills. He'd talk about closing deals at family dinners, and my parents would beam, hanging on every word. I'd watch silent knowing his firm was one of Walsh Analytics' clients. His bosses emailed me for updates, not him. But I never corrected them. What was the point? They'd made it clear who mattered. The worst was the family group chat. My mom would send photos of Brendan at some networking event captioned, "So proud of our star." I'd scroll past my finger hovering over the reply button wanting to share a press release about Walsh Analytics hitting $1 million valuation. I never did. They'd just ignore it or worse, tell me to stop showing off. So I stayed quiet, building my empire while they celebrated Brendan's empty wins. Looking back, I see how it shaped me. Every slight, every ignored achievement pushed me to work harder to prove myself to no one but me. I didn't need their praise, I had my team, my clients, my results. But that night at the restaurant, when they told me I didn't belong, something shifted. I wasn't just the quiet one anymore. I was ready to let them see who I'd become. The restaurant was alive with chatter and clinking glasses when I walked in. I adjusted my dress, hoping tonight might feel different, but my mom's voice cut through the noise. "We didn't invite you for a reason, Colleen," she said, her tone sharp, her eyes avoiding mine. I froze, my purse still clutched in my hand. Before I could respond, Brendan leaned in, his smile tight. "Don't say we're related, okay? Just keep it low-key." His words stung, but I swallowed hard, nodded, and moved past them. I wasn't here to argue. I just wanted to get through the night. I found a table near the back, away from their circle. My mom and dad were already mingling, laughing with relatives, their attention glued to Brendan. He worked the room like a politician, shaking hands, tossing out easy grins. I sat alone for a moment, watching him dominate the conversation. Then my friend Stacy slid into the seat next to me. "Hey, Colleen," she said, sipping her drink. "Heard your company's killing it. Any big plans?" I smiled, grateful for the distraction. "Just scaling up, maybe a new office?" I replied, keeping it light. We chatted about her marketing job, steering clear of anything heavy. Stacy wasn't here to fix my family issues, and I didn't want her to. Brendan's voice carried over from a nearby table, so I landed this huge deal at work he boasted loud enough for everyone to hear. The fintech project. Basically my idea. My dad clapped him on the shoulder, beaming. "That's our boy," he said, his voice warm with pride. I bit my lip, knowing the truth. Brendan's firm relied on Walsh Analytics for that project. My team's algorithms kept their systems running, not his charm, but I didn't say a word. Correcting him would be pointless, they'd never believe me. I sipped my water, watching my mom nod along as Brendan spun another story about his pivotal role. She laughed, her hand on his arm like he was the center of the universe. I remembered the last family dinner when I'd mentioned a new client at work. My dad had changed the subject before I could finish asking Brendan about his latest trip. Tonight was no different. They didn't even glance my way as I sat there, my plate untouched. A cousin asked me how I was, and I gave a polite smile. "Fine, thanks," I said, keeping my voice steady. I wasn't about to air the family's dirty laundry. Brendan kept going, his voice louder now. "We're about to close another major contract," he said, gesturing grandly. "I've been working late sealing the deal." My mom's eyes sparkled. "He's always been so driven," she told a family friend. I clenched my napkin under the table. Driven, he'd missed 3 deadlines on that project, and my team had to step in to clean up the mess. I'd seen the emails from his boss asking me to fix what Brendan couldn't, but here he was, soaking up the praise while I was just background noise. Stacy nudged me, sensing my tension. "You okay?" she asked quietly. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just taking it all in." We talked about her latest campaign, a safe topic that kept me grounded. I didn't want to vent or dwell on their dismissal. I'd learned long ago that expecting them to care was a waste of energy. Instead, I watched Brendan hold court, my parents hanging on his every word. They didn't notice me, didn't ask about my day, my work, my life. It was like I wasn't even there. As the evening wore on, I stayed calm, my face neutral. I wasn't going to let their words or their silence break me. I'd come to this gathering hoping for a shred of connection, but I was starting to see that hope was misplaced. They'd made their choice, and it wasn't me. But I wasn't invisible, not anymore. I had my own world, my own wins, and I didn't need their approval to keep going. As dessert was served, the chatter in the Fargo restaurant quieted forks pausing over plates of cheesecake. I leaned back in my chair expecting another toast to someone's milestone. Richard, Brendan's boss, cleared his throat, his voice steady and commanding. "I want to take a moment to thank someone who saved our company's biggest project this year," he said, scanning the room. My stomach tightened. I wasn't used to attention at these gatherings. Then he looked straight at me. "Colleen Walsh, founder and CEO of Walsh Analytics, your work was a game changer." The room erupted in applause, but a chill ran through me. My mom's fork clattered against her plate. My dad's smile froze, his eyes darting to Brendan. Brendan's face drained of color, his jaw tight as he gripped his glass. Richard kept going, oblivious to the tension. "Walsh Analytics rebuilt our payment systems from the ground up. Without Colleen's algorithms, we'd have lost millions." I caught my mom's glance. Her lips pressed thin, trying to mask her shock. My dad shifted in his seat, his hands clasped too tightly. They hadn't known. None of them had. Richard gestured toward me. "Colleen, would you say a few words?" I stood, my legs steady despite the weight of their stares. As I walked to the podium, I felt Brendan's eyes burning into me, his knuckles white. I took a breath, facing the crowd. "Thank you, Richard," I said, my voice clear. "I'm honored to be here. At Walsh Analytics, we believe in results over promises. It's about persistence, building something that lasts." I kept it short, my words deliberate, not once mentioning my family. The applause swelled again, but their silence was louder. As I returned to my seat, Richard caught me at the edge of the crowd. "We're finalizing a new investment deal with Walsh Analytics," he said, his tone professional. "But we need to ensure efficiency. I'd like your input on streamlining our team." I nodded, seeing my chance. "I'll back the deal," I said, "but only if your company cuts underperforming staff. No exceptions." Richard raised an eyebrow, understanding my implication. "Agreed," he said. "We'll review everyone, starting with the sales team." I glanced at Brendan, still frozen at his table. He knew exactly what I meant. My mom's face twitched, her composure slipping. She whispered something to my dad, her hands gesturing sharply. Brendan pushed back his chair, his movements jerky, like he was fighting to stay calm. I sat down, my pulse steady, watching them grapple with the truth. They'd spent years dismissing me, believing I was just good with tech. Now the room knew I was the one calling the shots. My dad tried to catch my eye, his expression a mix of confusion and unease. I looked away, focusing on my plate. The rest of the evening blurred. Relatives came over, offering congratulations, their voices warm with surprise. "I had no idea you ran a company," one aunt said, her smile genuine. I thanked her, keeping my responses brief. My family stayed at their table, huddled together, their whispers sharp and urgent. Brendan's laughter was gone, replaced by a tight-lipped scowl. My mom's eyes flicked toward me, then away, her fingers twisting her napkin. My dad stared at his drink, saying nothing. I didn't gloat or confront them. I didn't need to. The truth was out, and it was enough. Richard's words had shifted something in the room, in me. I'd spent so long invisible to them, but now they saw me, not the quiet daughter, not the backup plan, but the woman who built an empire. As the night wound down, I felt a quiet strength settle in. Their shock, their worry, their whispers, they couldn't touch me anymore. I was done seeking their approval. 3 days after the gathering, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I was at my desk in Minneapolis, finalizing a new client deal for Walsh Analytics, when a text from my mom popped up. "Colleen, we're so sorry about the party," she wrote. "We didn't realize your role. Can you help Brendan with his rent? We're short this month." I stared at the message, my chest tightening. Help Brendan. After years of being invisible to them, now they wanted my money. I set the phone down, my fingers trembling, and didn't reply. The next morning, a voicemail from my dad appeared. "Colleen, we're proud of what you've done," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "But Brendan's in a bind. You're doing so well, can you cover his bills just this once?" I listened. My jaw clenched. Proud. They'd never cared about my work before, never asked how I built a company from scratch. I deleted the voicemail, focusing on a spreadsheet. Their words felt like a transaction, not an apology. That afternoon, an email landed in my inbox from Brendan. "You made me look like an idiot at the party," he wrote, his tone sharp. "You could have told me you were the big boss. Now I'm in trouble at work, and you're just sitting there with your fancy company. Help me out, Colleen, or this gets worse." I read it, my stomach twisting. He thought I owed him, as if my success was his to claim. I closed the email, my hands steady but my heart racing. He didn't deserve a response. I opened my banking app, staring at the history of payments I'd made for years. Utility bills for my parents when their account was overdrawn. Rent for Brendan's downtown apartment when he couldn't make it work. $1,000 for their water heater last winter. Every transfer was a silent hope they'd see me value me. They never did. I hovered over the recurring payments: electricity, gas, Brendan's lease, and canceled them all. The screen confirmed the changes, and a weight lifted. I wasn't their ATM anymore. Sitting back, I thought about their messages. My mom's text wasn't about regret. It was about Brendan's rent. My dad's call wasn't about me. It was about saving their favorite. Brendan's email wasn't an apology. It was a demand dressed as blame. I'd spent years propping them up, wiring money while they praised his empty wins. No thank you, no questions about my life, just expectations. I was done. I turned my phone to silent, the screen dark. My office hummed with activity emails from my team, updates on a new algorithm, a pitch for a major bank. Walsh Analytics was my world, built from late nights and hard choices. I didn't need their approval to keep it growing. I opened a client proposal, my focus sharp. Their voices, their demands faded into the background. Each unanswered message felt like a step away from their shadow. I wasn't angry, just clear. I'd given them so much money, time, hope, and they'd given me silence in return. Now I was choosing my own path. My parents' bills would pile up. Brendan's rent would go unpaid, but that was their burden now, not mine. I leaned into my work, the numbers and strategies grounding me. They'd had their chance to value me. I wasn't waiting for another. A week later, an email from Walsh Analytics' HR team landed in my inbox. I was in my Minneapolis office sipping coffee when I opened it. The subject line read, "Update on investment partner review." It confirmed that Brendan's company had completed their staff evaluation as per my investment condition. Brendan had been demoted from his sales lead role due to consistent underperformance, missed deadlines, botched client reports, and reliance on my team's work. Days later, they let him go entirely. The email was formal, but the words hit hard. My condition to cut underperforming staff had worked, and Brendan was out. I leaned back, staring at the screen. Part of me had expected this, but seeing it in black and white felt heavy. I'd pushed for efficiency, not personal revenge, but I knew Brendan wouldn't see it that way. I closed the email and got back to work, preparing for a board meeting. My focus was on scaling Walsh Analytics, not dwelling on his fallout. That evening, my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Brendan standing on my porch. His face pale, eyes bloodshot. "Colleen, you have to fix this," he said, his voice breaking. "I lost my job because of you. You're the CEO, you can call them. Get me back." I stood frozen, my hand on the doorframe. He stepped closer, his hands shaking. "I can't pay my rent, my car, everything's falling apart. You owe me this." His words stung, but I held my ground, my expression calm. Before I could respond, Stacy pulled into my driveway. She'd planned to drop by for dinner, unaware of the scene unfolding. "Everything okay?" she asked, stepping out of her car, her eyes flicking between us. I nodded slightly, but Brendan kept talking, his voice rising. She's acting like she's better than me, he snapped. She got me fired, Stacy. Tell her to help me. Stacy crossed her arms, her face neutral. Colleen doesn't owe you anything, she said firmly. You're asking her to fix your mistakes. Her words grounded me. I took a breath, looking at Brendan. You need to take responsibility, I said, my voice steady. I didn't fire you. Your company did because you couldn't deliver. I built Walsh Analytics from nothing, and I won't undo my decisions to bail you out. His eyes widened, his mouth opening to argue, but I raised a hand. This isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. You've leaned on me for years now, it's on you. Brendan's shoulders slumped, his face a mix of anger and desperation. You're really going to let me sink? He asked, his voice quieter now. I didn't flinch. You're not sinking, I said. You're starting over. Figure it out. Stacy stepped closer, her presence steadying me. You've got this, Colleen, she said softly. You don't have to carry his weight. I nodded, grateful for her support. She didn't try to solve the problem or soften the moment, just reminded me I was doing the right thing. Brendan turned away, muttering under his breath, and walked to his car. The engine roared as he sped off, leaving silence in his wake. Stacy and I went inside, and over dinner she listened as I vented. You did what you had to, she said, her tone warm but firm. He's had every chance to step up, and he didn't. You're not his safety net. Her words settled something in me. I'd spent so long feeling invisible, but Stacy saw me, my strength, my choices. It was enough. Back at the office the next day, I dove into work. A new client contract needed my approval, and my team was prepping for a product demo. I didn't check my phone for Brendan's calls or texts. I didn't need to. I'd set a boundary, and it held. My company was thriving, my focus clear. Brendan's consequences were his own, and for the first time I felt free of his shadow. On a rainy Sunday morning, Maureen and Francis stood at my doorstep. The drizzle soaked their coats as I opened the door, my heart sinking at the sight of them. My mom's eyes were red, her hands clasped tightly. My dad stood behind her, his face drawn, avoiding my gaze. Can we come in? My mom asked, her voice soft but trembling. I hesitated, then stepped aside, letting them into my Minneapolis living room. The air felt heavy, charged with unspoken expectations. We sat across from each other, the coffee table a barrier between us. My mom spoke first, her words careful. We're sorry for how we treated you at the party, she said. We didn't understand your success. But Brendan's struggling now, he needs a job. You're connected, Colleen. Can you help him? My dad nodded, his voice low. He's in a bad place since he got fired. You could make a call, get him back on his feet. I leaned back, my fingers tracing the edge of my mug. Their apologies sounded rehearsed, like a prelude to what they really wanted. I took a breath, steadying myself. You're sorry now, I asked, my tone even. For years you ignored me. You praised Brendan's every move, even when he failed. I paid your bills, covered his rent, fixed your water heater, thousands of dollars, and you never said thank you. You never asked how I managed. And now you're here, because he needs me again. My mom's face flushed, her hands twisting in her lap. We didn't know you were doing all that, she said, her voice cracking. We thought you were just helping out. My dad shifted, his eyes finally meeting mine. We made mistakes, he said. But he's your brother. Family helps family. You're successful now? Can't you give him a chance? His words stung, echoing years of their favoritism. They weren't here for me. They were here for Brendan. I stood pacing to the window, the rain streaking down the glass. I gave you chances, I said, turning to face them. Every time I sent money, every time I sat quietly while you dismissed me at dinners at the party. You told me I wasn't invited, that I shouldn't say we're related. I built Walsh Analytics from nothing, and you didn't care until it affected him. I'm done being your fallback plan. My mom's eyes widened, tears brimming. Colleen, we're trying to make this right, she said, her voice pleading. Just one call to your contacts for Brendan's sake. I shook my head, my resolve firm. No, I said. I won't let you use me anymore. Brendan made his choices, he needs to face them. I've carried this family long enough. My dad's face hardened, his hands clenching. You're turning your back on us, he said, his voice low. After everything we've been through, I crossed my arms, meeting his gaze. Everything we've been through, I repeated. You mean me watching you celebrate Brendan while I was invisible? Me working nights to keep your lights on? I'm not turning my back. I'm setting boundaries. You don't get to demand my help when you've never valued me. The room fell silent, the weight of my words settling between us. My mom wiped her eyes, her shoulders slumping. My dad stared at the floor, his jaw tight. They stood to leave, my mom's voice barely a whisper. We didn't mean to hurt you, she said, reaching for her coat. I didn't respond, holding the door open as they stepped into the rain. My dad paused, looking back. You're making this harder than it needs to be, he said. I didn't flinch. No, I said. You did. They walked to their car, the engine starting with a low hum. I closed the door, my chest tight, but my mind clear. They hadn't come to mend things. They'd come to take, and they left empty-handed. I sat back down, the quiet of my house wrapping around me. Walsh Analytics was waiting, meetings, contracts, a new project launch. I didn't need their approval to keep building, to keep thriving. They'd made their choices, and I'd made mine. The rain kept falling, but I felt lighter, unburdened by their expectations at last. The weeks that followed were the quietest I'd ever known. My phone stayed silent, no texts or calls from my family. I'd blocked their numbers after the last confrontation, and the absence of their voices felt like a weight lifted. In my Minneapolis office, I poured myself into Walsh Analytics. New contracts rolled in, my team launched a payment platform for a major bank, and our revenue projections soared. I thrived in the rhythm of meetings, coding sessions, and late-night strategy calls. My world was my work, and it was enough. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Brendan was struggling. He'd applied for sales jobs across Fargo, but his lack of technical skills and spotty work history turned employers away. Each rejection chipped away at his confidence, leaving him stuck in a cycle of dead-end interviews. My mom and dad, meanwhile, faced their own battles. Without my financial support, their bills piled up: electricity, gas, even the mortgage. They'd relied on me for so long, assuming I'd always step in. Now they were scrambling, selling off furniture to make ends meet. I didn't gloat or dwell on their struggles. I just kept moving forward. To clear my head, I booked a week-long trip to San Francisco. I walked along the Golden Gate Bridge, the ocean breeze sharp against my skin. I ate fresh seafood at Fisherman's Wharf, watched the fog roll over the hills, and sat in cafes sketching ideas for Walsh Analytics' next project. For the first time in years, I felt free, not just from my family's demands, but from the need to prove myself to them. I wandered the city alone, my thoughts, my own, my choices unburdened. The skyline glittered at night, and I realized I was living for me, not for their approval. Looking back, I saw the truth I'd ignored for so long. My family's love came with conditions tied to what I could provide. They celebrated Brendan's empty promises while dismissing my quiet victories. I'd spent years seeking their recognition, sending money, staying silent when they pushed me aside. But their validation was a trap, pulling me into a cycle of giving without receiving. Cutting them off wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I learned that my worth didn't depend on their acknowledgement. It came from the company I built, the life I shaped, the boundaries I set. Leaving toxic relationships, even with family, was the hardest choice I'd ever made, but it gave me clarity. I wasn't responsible for their mistakes or their survival. My value wasn't tied to their expectations. It was in my resilience, my work, my ability to stand alone. San Francisco's streets reminded me of that every day, each step, a confirmation that I was enough. As I packed to return to Minneapolis, I felt a quiet strength. Walsh Analytics was growing, my team was stronger than ever, and I was at peace with my choices. My family's struggles were theirs to face, not mine to fix. I'd given them years of chances, but I'd given myself something better, a life free of their shadows. I boarded my flight home ready for the next chapter one I'd write on my own terms. Thank you for listening to the end. Please share your thoughts in the comments.